Welcome to the Courage Barbell Unlimited podcast with your host, legendary powerlifter and strength athlete, Chad Ikes. For most, the journey of strength starts in the gym, but should inevitably expand through all aspects of life. Join us as we discuss all things strength. Now, here's your host, Chad Ikes.
Hey, everybody. Today we have a guest. I'm completely honored to have him on. We've been friends for a long time, and we were on the Elite FTS team. Vinny, what's your last name? Dizenzo. I was thinking about this morning. I've never said your last name.
That's all right. I've said your last name wrong in the past, so I'm glad it was announced that way. There, I'm like, is it Aikes or Ikes? And I always thought it was Ikes, but now
it is Ikes. It is Ikes. So yeah, we have Vinny on today. I've been looking forward to this one for a while. As everybody knows, I'm a little bit antisocial, and I don't mind spending time alone. So there's all these people I really love to get together and talk to, but I kind of like get in my own little shell, you know? And so it's like you see him around meets, and then after the meet, you're like, fuck, I wanted to talk to him more. And so now we actually get to sit down and record the conversation and just talk about training and everything. And but I do want to start with kind of your history and how you got started. I was looking up, I looked up open powerlifting this morning and your name, and I saw this. It said 810 under the deadlift. And I went, what? No, wait a minute. Like, Vinny was never built to deadlift. How did Vinny do 810 deadlift? But you have like so many impressive numbers. And did we actually start about the same time? Did you start competing about was it 2000 or something like that? 2001?
All right. So I'll start with the fact that I have no head for numbers. I have no memory of when I don't have great long-term memory. So I don't remember really when I started. My first meet was actually when I was 15. And then I hadn't competed again until I was in my late 20s. So I'm 15. So I started, so right around the late 90s, early 2000s is when I started. And the 810, it must have been attributed to, I did a strongman. It was a trap bar deadlift at a strongman. So I don't know if that somehow got thrown in there, but yeah. And it was, that's a fun story because it was, it wasn't a high handle. It was a low handle trap bar. And I didn't wear a belt, and everybody made a big deal about how I didn't wear a belt. And I was like, I can't, because I couldn't bend over far enough to pick up the bar with a belt on because I was 330 pounds at 5'8" on a good day. So yeah, I was actually a much better full meet lifter. I ruptured two discs in my back pretty early on, and when I started getting serious about competing, in my late 20s. And my bench, I couldn't even bench 300. It took me years to bench 400 in a shirt. So after I rehabbed my back, it's all I had. I think I was trying to get to the USAPL or whatever it was then, nationals. And I was squatting, single ply gear, squatting at 242. I think I squat 800 and I pulled 650. And I had much better squat and deadlift numbers than I did bench.
Yeah, that's good. So what were your numbers at 15?
Oh my God, I couldn't tell you. All I know is there was a legend in Connecticut powerlifting called Lou Capozzi. And he had set many records, and we're about the same age. But have you ever shown up to a meet? And this probably didn't happen to you. You're a big dude. And will share with you the first time I wanted to talk to you, and we'll get back. It was at some type of Raw event before Raw was big, and it was in Massachusetts.
Yes. It was like a New England, powerlifting MMA type deal. Yeah.
Yes. I was supposed to compete in that. I tore my bicep a few weeks before, so I couldn't compete in that because the guy who ran it, he did lots of strongman competitions. I competed against Brian Schoonfeld, the pro strongman. I competed against, that's where they had Josh Bryant when Josh was only early 20s, and what a beast. And he would put on, he would put on these strongman meets, and Ed Cohn would come judge. Bill Kazmaier was a judge, and it was wild because he paid good money. I won, back then thousands of dollars in this, kind of. They were all weighted events, but they were more, strongman. It was strict overhead or overhead press and a bench press, so it wasn't implements. But I was walking into that meet with my wife, and I'm 300 pounds, and I saw you in front of me. You had the wild hair. All I saw was calves. And I was like, dear God, what in the fuck is that? I mean, it had to be the size of bowling balls. And I was like, I've always wanted to be a big guy. I was never a big guy. So I was always enamored with the big guys. And I was like, holy shit. And someone goes, oh, that's Chad Ikes. And I was like, oh, all right, that's Chad Ikes. And it's crazy that we ultimately ended up on a team together. But it was funny because at that meet, I was walking in the door, and the coolest I've ever felt in powerlifting is I had torn my bicep, and about a month before, Bill Kazmaier was judging at the strongman I was doing along with Ed. And when I walked in the door, Kazmaier is holding court with a bunch of people, and there's all these powerlifters. And Bill walks up to me, and he comes over and he shakes my right. He goes, "Oh my God, Vin, what happened to you?" And everybody thinks like I'm friends with Bill Kazmaier. And it was just circumstance that he had met me a few weeks before, and I had torn my bicep. And I was like, yep, Bill Kazmaier knows who I am. That was my claim to fame. That was one of the coolest moments of my entire life because he was definitely a motivator for me.
I have a story about Ed Cohn like that, where I was at the Arnold and I'm working one of the booths. It's like 5 Tetra or some shit. And I kind of saw him out of the corner of my eye, and he's like walking down the aisle, and I'm like, dude, that's Ed Cohn. Holy shit. I'm having this conversation with myself. And I go, is he coming towards me? Like Ed Cohn's coming over here. And he comes over and he's like, hey, Chad, how you doing, man? Are you competing today? And I'm just like, yeah. And in my head, I'm going, Ed Cohn knows my name. Ed Cohn knows who the fuck I am. And then as we talk a little bit, and he leaves, and I'm immediately texting my handler going, dude, Ed Cohn knew my name. Like he didn't just come say hello, lifter. He actually knew my name.
He has to be one of the coolest people. And on top of being the GOAT, that's one thing. I don't know numbers. And that's why I tell people about numbers. They get their heads fixated on numbers. I held an all-time world record bench press when there was we know when there was only one number. There was it wasn't raw equipped. There was just one number. And for a point in time at 275, I had the all-time world record in the bench press, which means nothing to anybody. You know who it meant? Picture, it meant something to. It meant something to Ryan Kennelly and Bill Crawford, who were both holding it at 765 at the time, and I did 767 and a half. And that's the only people it meant anything to. Like I didn't show up to work on Monday. There wasn't a parade, but so I couldn't tell you what Ed's numbers are, but I could tell you Ed, is the GOAT.
Yeah.
So when people get all crazy about numbers, I'm like, make your mark, do something good in a sport, make good lifts, and people will know you and remember you. But if you just come in and hit a few good numbers, as cool as it is, if that's what you want to do, it's really not what you find out. The sport's not as much about numbers as you really think it is.
Yeah. Well, I think that's true. And I think like for me, I like to take things much deeper. Like I feel like the world has this surface level and I don't like to go below that. I love going below that. So like for me, when you say GOAT, that means like, who are they? I wouldn't pick a GOAT that's an asshole. I just wouldn't. No. And so like with Ed, it's like, well, wait a minute. Ed put up records. Ed was a great competitor. But even more than that, like Ed is an ambassador to the sport. I've never seen that man be an asshole to anybody. I've never seen him turn anyone down during a time when people like, oh, you're raw. Oh, you're geared. Oh, you're double ply. Like Ed never cared. He's like, dude, you're an awesome lifter, man.
He's always saying
you choose to wear the gear you choose to wear. I don't care. Yeah. And I think that's more important, at least to me and a lot of people, than the numbers in the end.
Yeah, I think I'm sure both of us could probably list on both hands lifters that we thought were complete assholes who are great lifters that aren't in the sport, that nobody knows about, nobody talks about. I mean, I'm sure there's a few outrageous stories from some of these guys we could laugh about, but they're not well remembered. And if you're not well remembered, what would you do it for?
Yeah. And like, I think there's that ability to pass on information, and that's one thing. Ed's still out there. Ed still goes to meets. He still helps lifters. He's still putting on seminars, and like, that's a great thing. You make it to the top and it doesn't just end there. Then it's like, all right, hey, I had this great opportunity and learned all these lessons. Can I pass it on? Because that's how the sport grows too.
Yeah, and that's why I think I'm really glad I went over to Elite. I was sponsored by Inzer back when I had met Dave, and he did an interview with me, and I don't even know, it's probably for YouTube. Who the hell knows? We weren't even really doing podcasts then. And he said something. He goes, "I don't know why you're not sponsored by us," because Rhodes had already been sponsored, and I was like, I really wanted to be with Elite because I just wanted to be able. I wanted more exposure. I wanted to be able to give a little more. I mean, part of it was ego, because the Team Elite FDS was a big deal.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a big deal. And by the way, I just have to shout out to you. Like, I was always very jealous of your singlet, of your special custom done singlet with your sponsors. You had Elite FTS on there. I'm always like, wait, because they weren't making those, and like you were all geared out. I'm like, Chad was it Muscle Milk?
Oh yeah, I had Muscle Milk. I had a T-shirt company. I had Body Tech. I had, like, I don't know, there was like 6 or 7, I think,
You
on
had
there at
some
one
kind of
point.
anarchy symbol on it.
That's my symbol. That's my initials.
That's right. Okay, I was like, that thing was always dope. So I was
Yeah, we had like team shirts. Like, all my handlers had like work shirts that had all the logos and shit on them.
Oh yeah, they were all black, right?
Yeah.
Yep, I totally remember. Uh yeah, going back, that's why I really like Elite. And when you say pass on, Dave's always kind of pushed that, and like you're doing it right now. It's great. We were doing it before the podcasting, and I'm not saying we were pioneers, but we've been passing on information for a long time on forums, wherever we can, and that's what I love about the strength community. Well, and honestly, I don't know much about CrossFit. I do like watching it, but give me strongman, give me CrossFit, give me anybody who loves to train, like power lifters. If you love to train, bodybuilding, not my thing. I wish I could train like a bodybuilder. Every time I try to, I'm miserable. I hate it. But I respect it and know what it takes. So anybody who trains hard, I can talk to them. I can get behind that. And there's stuff to be learned from all of them.
I've seen pictures of you recently, and you're pushing that bodybuilding thing.
Well, I appreciate you saying that. I think it is it's just I've done the basics for so long that I've built just a body of work that just continues. I think I'm more maintaining. I'm so afraid of gaining weight, being that I've lost 130 pounds, being that I feel great, being that I have other activities that I love to do. I love to ski, paddle board. I love to hike. I'm into running a little bit. I'd like to start surfing again. So, but I'm not giving up one for the other. I just have to figure out the balance between them both.
Right.
I'd be lying if I didn't say I didn't enjoy the aesthetic of being in shape. As someone who was never in shape when I was young, I was always a very hard gainer. And one of the things that always stuck with me was training when I was in an underclassman in the gym playing football. And he had said, I'd never seen someone work so hard and make so little gains. And that
Thanks,
hurt.
buddy. Thanks.
That hurt. But you know what? At 50, I'll be 55 in a month. At 55, I'm probably holding up better than a lot of the guys that were, talking shit to me back then. And it's the haters who push you forward. For me, I've always found that it never knocked me down. It always made me work harder.
I was thinking about that this morning. Like, when I broke 1,000-pound squat, I did it drug free in AWPC Worlds, or Nationals first, then went to Worlds. And I remember the APF Outlaw Forum. Man, guys were just bullshit. He's not clean. Da, 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 da. And like my training partners are like, I'm going to get a nerd and figure out where these fuckers live. And I'm like, no, dude, listen, you're looking at it all wrong. Like they're saying that I did something that's so amazing and so spectacular that their brains can't fathom that I could actually do it. Yeah. I go, they actually gave me the greatest compliment ever.
Did you experience, so I started off drug-free. I was drug-free for, I never imagined actually going on. My girlfriend, wife was completely against it. I never really kind of thought about it. And I would take every like the androstenedione cream. Like if I could rub it or drink it or whatever, as long as I wasn't shooting it, I was like, I'm fine. And I tested positive at a meet, and it was John Bott, who was the meet coordinator, and he called Billy Mimnoff because he's like, Billy, he's like, Vinny tested positive. He felt really bad. And Billy's like, we trained in the same gym. And he's like, Billy's like, he's not on. But whatever. And I got a certified letter, and I was like, what the fuck is this? So I checked, and it said I tested positive. And I was like, I was beside myself because I'd been drug tested the greatest feeling is being drug tested when you believe you're not on drugs. It's like when I get pulled over, I don't drink anymore. When I get pulled over, you're always worried when you're younger if you're partying. I get pulled over for like, at drunk the DWI stops or whatever. I'm like, go ahead, test away. I don't care. Yeah. So I always like test away. I was always very cocky because I always found it interesting how it was random drug testing, yet I was randomly drug tested at every drug-free meet I had ever done. So I'm like, all right, so much for random. But, John had said something, John said something to Billy. I had heard, I saw the test. And my wife, I don't know if Jess and I were married at the time. We probably weren't married yet. But she saw I was beside myself. And it was so funny because she's like, well, there's only one way you're going to be able to prove you weren't taking anything. And she goes, that's to take something. And I was like, what? I've got the green light? That's how I know I got my ride or die, because she was totally against it. And it's funny because it really changed her outlook. It changed my size and my strength, but it didn't change who I was at all, which I think a lot of people get very fearful of. But yeah, so that's very interesting. Like the drug-free thing, you really take a beating when you're drug-free, which
honestly, you can't win.
No, you can't.
Either you don't lift good and people go, oh yeah, you're drug-free, or you lift good and they're never going to believe you.
Until you go on and start benching over 700.
Yeah. See, I had, this is a different experience. And I've argued with Dave about this for a long time because the reason I went on, I never even thought about it. I wrote papers in high school about how evil drugs were and because I followed all the government bullshit. Right. And so I was never going to do steroids. I'm like, I'm just going to beat them clean. I don't give a shit. And so I started lifting, and at one point I got sick. And then I got really sick. I lost like 12 pounds in one day. Wow. And I was still drinking and still eating. And I'm like, how is this even possible? I go, okay, I hate doctors, but I need to go to the doctor. And my legs were on fire. Like I had blisters. They were so hot. I was at work with ice packs on them. And they ran all these tests. The doctor's like, I want to teach you. Can I test you for HIV? I go, I don't care. I don't have HIV, but whatever. Yeah. Like, just figure it out. And the only thing that came back was I had low testosterone.
Wow.
And so they put me on testosterone, and bam, never got sick again. My training partners are like, dude, what's wrong with you, man? And I go, what do you mean, man? I feel great. They're like, yeah, why are you so happy? You're all pissed off. And I go, I guess it's a testosterone. I don't know. And then Dave's like, yeah, your number shot up. And I go, no, they actually were going up even when I had low testosterone, which I don't understand. But they kept going up. I mean, drug-free, I did over 1,000-pound squat. I did over 700-pound bench, and I was pulling in the mid-sevens.
Right. So my question to you was, when the doctor prescribed for low testosterone, you weren't probably taking an exorbitant amount.
Like no, I started with the gel, and I realized on my test, I was looking at my test results, and I'm like, holy shit, my estrogen's through the roof. And my doctor didn't even notice it. So I'm like, all right, that's it. I got to find a better doctor. So I went and found like a hormone replacement specialist. And we kind of got things lined out. And at that point I went, you know what? Like, I'm taking a needle. So I'm going to stop doing drug tested meets. And I go, if I'm doing this, why don't that's when I started talking to more people, and everyone I talked to had nothing bad to say about it. And I'm like, these aren't scientists and these aren't guys writing papers. These are guys that are living it. And I remember I called because I had always told Dave I was clean, and I was sponsored by, through Elite by this time. And I love telling this story because I called Dave up and I go, hey, Dave, so they put me on testosterone replacement, and I'm like, fuck it. Like, so give me some idea. What should I do? And he's like, fuck you. And I go, fuck me, fuck you. What the fuck are you talking about? And he's like, you're really clean. And I go, yeah, I told you that. And he goes, well, I didn't believe you. I'm like, fuck off, man.
Yeah. Nobody ever believes. And I really think that probably one of the things that helped both you and I the most was, at what age did you go on testosterone?
Oh man, I'm like you. I don't remember. People ask me what my best numbers are, and I'm like,
yeah.
It was somewhere, my guess is around 33, 34.
Mine was right around 30. And so I truly believe that I was able to experience longevity in the sport, among other things, because I rode that natural wave as long as I could. Because at that age, I was probably coming to a bubble. You seem like you were.
Yes.
And again, I could have continued on upward trend, but I'm certainly not going to. For myself, it did make a big difference. I think what people don't realize is that it's not going to. Now, I might not be getting the science perfect. It's not going to actually help you build the muscle as much. It's going to help you recover.
Yeah.
And my biggest problem now is I always used to be able to just train as hard as I fucking could until I couldn't train anymore. And then I'd recover and I would train.
Right.
So by being able to recover more, I was able to train more.
Yes.
And train harder and train heavier and recover. So that cycle, so I know that cycle of training hard and recovering, I was able to do more and faster. Because now, as I'm older and I'm just on TRT replacement, therapy, and on top of being in my mid 50s, my recovery is such an issue because I still train hard, I condition hard, but I can't train as hard as I want. When I was younger, it was easy. I could train as hard as I want. I could be in the gym for 6 hours as long as I slept and ate. Occasionally you'd have to take a week off, or you'd have to miss a day because you were just too sore. But being on really, what the big difference was being able to recover and train harder, because it's what I love to do. I'm always fascinated by people who like finish the sport and stop training. I'm like, I don't get it. I love training.
Yeah. So it's interesting because I always tell people, I go, listen, if you break this down to the simplest thing, and this is like an Arthur Jones deal, you have to stimulate growth. You have to recover from that training session. Then you have to have time to actually grow. The faster you can do that, the quicker you can make gains. So like, even if somebody's drug free, I'm like, listen, if you're sleeping 6 hours a night, start sleeping 9. Because then you're going to be able to train more often and recover. In this whole process, you're going to get stronger faster. So then I agree. Like, I think one of the biggest, well, first of all, I'm not against steroids by any means. I've had, other than this bald spot, I've had no real side effects. I did start losing my hair when I went on test. That was the only thing. But I think the biggest thing that it does is recovery. It speeds up your recovery. Now, I think for us, I feel like going on longer, like you said, it helped me build that base, and it built that base in being able to stress myself in tendon strength and ligament strength. Like, I have no tendon problems. I have no ligament problems. I have no joint problems. And I'm 52.
Yeah.
And I think it's because I went on so long. But what I see is a lot of guys go on steroids and like, oh, I can train way more. And it's like, no, don't train more. Train how you are. Go on. And then if after a while you're like, hey man, I feel like I'm recovering. Awesome. Maybe I could train a little more often. Okay, then try it.
Yeah. I was also always very good about going off as long as I was on. I
Mm-hmm.
was very methodical about how I'd schedule meets. And so I would always, if I was on for 12 weeks or if it was a short cycle for 8 weeks, whatever it was, depending on the meet, I always made sure to go off as long as then. And the one thing was always interesting because people always talked about off season, like, after meet, after you go off, you know, I would eat more, I'd sleep more, and I would never change my training. I never lost gains. I never lost gains because I refused to give them up. I was always fascinated, like people who would just take downtime.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and like, well, I'm going off, so I'm going to take it easy now. I'm going to take a month or, and I'm like, yeah, I just, A, because I love to train, and B, because yeah, I had to fight so hard for everything I got. Cause I'm not, to look at me when I was younger, I'm not someone who is, you know, I didn't put on muscle easily. I wasn't particularly strong. Like everything I did, I just had to work really hard. And that's why now I panic. Like my weight doesn't fluctuate because I know a lot of people who lost over 100 pounds, they gain it back. I know
Right.
people who, so I'm always afraid of, of losing what I've worked for. And I drives me, it also makes me a little crazy and it can get in my head a little. Um, but it's what drives me.
Well, I think that it's from knowing you. I don't think you ever really trained, or no, I shouldn't say that. That totally came out completely wrong because I know how hard you do train. I don't think you ever really overtrained bad. I
Yeah.
think you were kind of smart enough to go, hey, I need more sleep. And I mean, honestly, if you get 9 to 10 hours of sleep a night and you're eating healthy and good and enough calories, most people could probably train pretty fucking hard and stay up with it.
That's my biggest problem now is I have energy management issues. I can't I think I so it took me over 10 years to lose 130 pounds. Which is awesome because I've kept it off. I don't have really much loose skin. I maintain a lot of muscle, but I know I did some metabolic damage to myself because my calories for my weight are relatively low. Like I maintain around 2,400 calories. And when I tell people that, they're like really surprised. They're like, that's kind of low, anywhere between 2,400 to 2,800, because the way I calculate my meats post cook, but it works for me. But I'm under 3,000 calories a day to maintain.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a fine balance. Like when I was super heavyweight, I recovered well because I was eating 7,000 calories a day.
Yeah.
And I don't care what anybody says. When people tell me they're eating, 5, 10,000 calories a day, I'm like, you're not.
Yeah.
You're not.
I,
Unless
I
you're,
do that too.
yeah, unless you're sitting there drinking, olive oil, you're not eating that many calories on an average on a day because I ate a lot. And 7,000 calories is a lot, and to do it day in, day out. But that's why I recovered. My body was so nourished. I
Yeah.
wish I had known a little more about nutrition, but I was even listening to I forget, might have been a podcast with Peter Attia. He was talking to like a scientist who specializes in protein synthesis, and he said at a certain point, it doesn't matter what, if you're overeating, you're getting all the protein you need.
Yeah.
It's just going to happen because carbs are protein sparing anyway. So I was getting all the energy. So now I have an energy balance issue when I'm trying to maintain. If I train a little hard, I end up losing a little, I'm not giving my body everything it needs. So plus the age, that's what I struggle with. And I think that's where a lot of guys struggle with training now. They want to be lean, they want to look great, they want to train hard, and it's a fine line. I always tell people I don't understand why I started cutting weight because, after I benched 600, over 600 raw, I'm like, I was in my mid 40s and I'm like, what am I going to do?
Mm-hmm.
Am I going to, because a lot of our contemporaries, Chad, I mean, we both know we're losing friends.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I don't want to be that person. Like I had
Mhm.
told my wife, I told everybody, I started competing when I was well, my first competition as an adult, not when I was 15. I was 210 pounds. I was like a light 220. Excuse me. And I went all the way up to 330 pounds. But I told everybody, I was like, I'm gonna take this weight off. I will take it off. And everybody's like, sure you will. I'm 330 pounds. I'm like, sure you're. I'm like, no, I'm gonna take it off. And I did, but I never was cutting weight while I was trying to get stronger. I don't
Yeah.
understand people's fascination with cutting weight. I only started cutting weight. Powerlifting is the greatest weight loss tool in the world because I was super heavyweight. What's the next step? Go down to 308. What's the
Yeah.
next step? Go down to 275. It's these small chunks I was able to do over a decade and compete for fun. And I still was throwing up good numbers, not as good as I was, you know, able to do at my heaviest, but I maintained the muscle I put on as I was getting bigger. I maintained a lot of the strength. And I think, we see a lot of people in the sport now who aren't willing to just put the size on to get stronger.
Oh, definitely. It's become, and you can see that when you go to meets, there's not that many huge people anymore.
Yeah, and there's guys putting up great numbers. And I mean, I'm not saying everybody should be a super heavyweight anymore, but I see a lot of people. Listen, if you're holding your weight back to get the half wrapped, single ply, non drug firefighter, you know, backwards hat wearing deadlift single lift record, I had an all-time world record. Not a hey, I showed up to work on Monday. Hey, how was your weekend? Yeah, I set a world record. That's nice. Okay, have a good day. So
It's funny because I was on my last podcast, the table talk with Dave. We somehow came up, we were talking about masters records. And I'm like, I'm not saying I'm done competing yet. I haven't actually. And Dave's like, you and me both know if you break a Masters world record, the first thing you're going to think is, and I'm like, yeah, what's that? And he goes, I had a real world record. And I go, yeah, that's the first thing I'll think. You're right.
but those numbers
Like, because it was one I just posted. I just found the old, I can't believe I still have this, an old thing of Powerlifting USA with the top 100. Like that was what you looked at. I didn't
yeah.
care what they were wearing. I'm like, who is the number one? Who put up the biggest number? That's what I want.
And then when your number got beat, it was a phone call. Mine didn't make it in the books as number one. I knew I had it, but then it had gotten beaten, so it never made it. And I was like, the timing was wrong. Like, son of a bitch. I never got the number. I was
That's
like second.
I even in the podcast again, I was talking to Paul Leonard and I'm like, dude, I can't remember if I made one or two. Cause like I forgot it's a long time ago. And then I remembered, oh yeah, if it would have came out when I broke the 2733, I would have been number one. But the
Right.
super heavyweights didn't come out till Donnie went, and Donnie beat me like 20 pounds. I'm like, son of a bitch.
Son of a I would have had that framed. Now it's sitting like, because I was like number two or number three. Now it's sitting in some box in my basement. Man, that month or two made the difference between that being framed on my wall and being in a box in the basement. But now you could print it off immediately. You could open powerlifting but
Mm-hmm.
I look at the numbers because I'm like, oh, if I do a meet for fun, you want to have something to kind of shoot for.
Yeah.
But Dave, I said something to Dave about possibly doing one of the band shirt meets. He goes, do me a favor, don't look up any numbers and just go lift. And I'm like, it's probably the best idea.
Yeah. We're in a different I don't know, like realm. Getting older is weird. And I messaged with Schwab the other day, and we kind of messaged back and forth a little bit about that, where it's like, no matter what I do in the gym right now, in my head, it's going to be nothing because I'm not going to go squat 1,200 pounds. If I squatted
Yeah.
1,000 right now, I'd be like, yeah, it's 1,000 pounds, whatever.
See, I'm lucky. I've set different standards for myself. I have two standards, well, three. One of them was running an 8-minute mile. Then I had a setback, a family setback, and I had because I wasn't training. It was the longest bout I went without training. I went 3 months without training. Because even when I had torn things, I've had torn MCL, whatever it was, I always trained whatever I could.
Hmm.
But my father was in the hospital for a long time. We had taken my mother, and there was just a lot of family issues. So I wasn't training, and I started, because of lack of activity, I started getting spinal stenosis. My toes had actually become numb.
Hmm.
There's still that'll never come back. And I saw my PT at one of my friends' party. He had a Christmas party, and he was friends with a PT, and he looked at me. He's like, "What happened to you?" Because I had lost a lot of weight. I couldn't sleep. I wasn't sleeping at all, which I definitely makes me feel for you. I mean, I was. There were nights where I just laid up, just staring. I'm like not sleeping, and people were like just shocked to see me. I fell apart. Um, but God, I forgot where I was going with this before I dug my hole into my past. I was talking about my back. Anyway, I'm sorry. I apologize. This is this is
I do
this
that
is
all the time.
this is age completely kicking in. It'll probably come to me 5 minutes
It,
if I
it
sit.
was about you setting different goals.
Oh, right. Thank you very much. So after that, I couldn't do the 8 minute mile. So I'm like, let me just get under 10 minutes. So I got under 10 minutes. And now my goal every year, I have 4 standing goals. It's to run my mile time in a better time than I did last year. So last year I was running it and I saw on my watch, I was like, oh, I'm way under 10. I think I had to beat like 9:23. And it was like 8 something on the last lap. And I looked down, I'm like, oh, I'll definitely come in. I set a Russian PR. I'm like, no need to make it too hard for next year. So I made it at 9:03.
Yeah.
So the goal is to always to beat that time, to do some form of double body weight bench. I bench a lot with my legs up now, but I actually put my heels on it. It's almost like a decline. But sometimes I'll use a shoulder saver. I'm not married. Sometimes I'll use a football bar. I'm not married to it being a competition bench. My trap bar deadlift, I need to do 2.5 times body weight. Uh, so for me, that and again, I'm not married to whether I have to. I don't have high handles, but I've done it off 2 inch boxes before. I'm not married to how I do that. As long as I do it, it's like Dave squatting off of 13 boxes when you
Yeah.
see Dave do his lifts and he's doing like a 1 inch squat. Whatever. I'm Dave, I'm on your side. And I always want my weight to be 1 pound less than it was the year before.
Hmm.
Because if I'm covering those 4 metrics, if I'm coming in a little lighter every year, if I'm getting a little faster and I'm maintaining my strength, I'm setting myself up for a really good end of, however long I live is fine, but I want to be able to be as active as I can up until then.
Right.
And that's my goal. And I can bench 400 pounds, which most people can't.
Right.
And so it's not over 600. It's not 900 in a shirt, but I'm still doing something most people can't. So I think you need to find the metric to motivate yourself.
Hmm.
Um, and it makes training really meaningful. Because then I have training cycles where I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to do focus on conditioning for these couple of months. So my training will be on more of my weights will be on more of a maintenance level, which resensitizes you. Because otherwise, you're constantly building volume,
Yeah.
and if you're constantly building volume, it's always hard to outdo yourself. So by having a conditioning block, I can take my training to kind of a base level for a little while and really up my conditioning. And it's really helped me stay motivated and train hard.
Well, I think it's like when you as we get older and things change. And even I had a back issue for like 2 years, man. It took me forever. And I'm asking all kinds of people to look at it. It took me a long time to figure out what the imbalance was and start getting it fixed. So then I went, all right, Chad, like, dude, your past is your past. Right now, this is what you can deadlift. So if you do more, you PR. Like, and
Yeah.
I try to have that mindset, but at the same time, everybody's like, "Oh, dude, you did 400 for 5, man," and I'm like, "Yeah, whatever. It's 400 for 5." Okay. Yeah, I mean, so like, I'm kind of happy that I'm PRing it and challenging it, but at the same time, there's part of me that goes, "So what, dude? Who cares?"
Oh, no, you got to celebrate that. You got to celebrate that. The fact that the fact that you can do it, you really need. I'm very lucky that I spend a lot of time. I have a lot of perspective. Losing my brother at a younger age helped me gain a lot of perspective, and I have a lot of gratitude for what I do have in life.
Mm-hmm.
So my gratitude towards training and still being somewhat strong, like Chad, I think one of our problems is you train, you train in your garage.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you go to your local gym, even at your age,
Oh, I'm
you
gonna
know,
still kill people.
right. And I think you lose perspective because your only person you're training against is yourself.
Yeah.
And it's not that I go to gyms because I train at my house, but occasionally there's a great gym in Connecticut, Hellbent. I'll go there. And, for my age, I can keep up with a lot of the guys there. And there's some people doing some crazy numbers too, and most of them are geared. But when we're on the raw bench and I see what people are doing, I'm like, yeah, I'm not too far off. So, I don't want to be like, yeah, when I was your age, but I
Yeah.
just know that I'm when I'm lifting around other people, they're always kind of like, wow, man, just like you said, you need to take credit for that because
Yeah.
there's a lot of guys our age. Again, there's a lot of guys our age that are in the ground right now.
Oh, definitely. I train online clients, and then I have my clients that I still train in person here. And I have one group that's a couple power lifters, and the one guy was playing IFL football and stuff. And every now and then I would just jump in with them. And the other day, this happened like a couple weeks ago, and Paul's like, dude, you're incredible. And I'm like, what the hell are you talking about? He goes, I know you've been struggling with your sleep lately and you haven't been training super hard, but then all of a sudden you decide to jump in with us and kick our ass. And I'm like, okay.
It's what I do. Take your flowers, dude. Take your flowers. You know what? Yeah. You got to take the
But I
wins.
think the goal thing is important. And that's like when I started riding BMX bikes again a few years back. It's like, dude, I can go out and crank out 10 to 12 miles, no problem. And like when I have people come visit me and they're like, hey, I want to go for a bike ride. I go, okay, I'm only going for a serious bike ride though. I'm not going fucking around. Like we're going to go for a
Yeah.
ride. And I kill them. And I'm
It's
like,
fun.
dude, I'm old and fat. What's your problem, man? Come on.
Oh, see, you'll take credit for that, but you're not taking credit for your lifting.
Yes.
Okay. All right. I get it.
I'm weird, man.
No, it's because
It's something weird about being at the top. And then no matter how much I try, I mean, I'm getting better at it and I continue to work at it. But like there's always this little click in the back of my head that goes, yeah, but you've done this. Yeah, but you've done this.
it's also that being strong isn't a surprise, but being conditioned is.
Yeah, that's true.
I was at Elite, and I think they had ropes, and this was when I was 300 plus, and they had like ropes hanging, and this I couldn't. They laughed because I couldn't put on my shoes. I had a strap to lift my leg to my foot to get. I mean, the jokes were abound.
I remember we were having lunch or dinner somewhere, and I'm like, "Can you touch the back of your head?" And you're like, I can't reach it."
Nope. So they had so people were doing like trying to do rope pull-ups, and I jumped and I grabbed a rope with each hand, and I was able to bang out like 3 pull-ups, and they're like, what the? And I'm like, right. It's so for us, it's fun to do things people don't expect us to be able
Yes.
to do.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I get the bike riding thing. So yeah. But yeah, I'm just glad I still get excited about what I can do in the gym, and I still have my goals. So, and I know I'm super excited every year I get them because I know that there's going to be a year that I won't.
Yeah.
There might be a year, depending on how much weight I lose, when I won't do a double body weight bench press, or I
Yeah.
won't do 2.5 time deadlift. So while I can still do it, for me, that metric is like, man, another year. I got another year of good hard work, and I was it.
Mhm.
It also means I was able to train consistently. I'm injury free. Um, and at our age, those are the things that really you when you don't have setbacks. So like you said, you're back. Minimizing setbacks as you get older is really the most important part of training.
Yeah. And like one of my ones this year, I want to do a 315 bench for 20 reps.
Nice.
Just because I haven't done it in a long time. I haven't pushed my reps. And I'm like, that'd be cool to hit. I mean, it's not insane numbers. It's not unbelievable. I've done it plenty of times in my life, done way more than that actually. But like for right now and the shape I'm in and dropping body weight, I go, that'd be cool. I would
Yeah.
enjoy
So
that. So, I mean, I'm always trying to set myself up, and I actually started practicing some rotational stuff because I was like, man, I wouldn't mind getting my hands on a shot put again
I
and
love that.
go compete in something that I haven't done since college.
It's so ironic that you said that because a little while ago I did a 12-mile ruck and I did it at the track because it was something Wendler and Rose were talking about doing.
Mm-hmm.
A 12-mile ruck. Jim had done it. I think Matt was kind of training for it. Um, but I knew I was going to do it on the track because I know for me with my back and my hip, like everything's in a good place. And I live by the motto, I know what won't happen if. So
Mm-hmm.
I know if I'm on the track, I'm putting myself in a better place for success than if I'm doing it on open road or on a on a hike somewhere. Because
Mm-hmm.
the way tracks are made now, they're amazing. Like it's
Yeah.
really so much. But I was there while I was walking. I was doing my 12 miles, and I watched somebody probably in their 40s, pretty big dude, at the circle with a shot put, and I was like, "That's so rad that he's doing his thing." I've never seen anybody at the track or anywhere just as someone who wasn't no longer like, at let's say a collegiate age,
Yeah.
just banging out the shot put. And I was like, because I used to throw the shot. I wasn't good at the shot. I was better at the discus because I wasn't big. Like in high school, I was 170 pounds. Like I was a 170 pound nose tackle. I was not a big dude. So I was not good at the shot, but I was interested in almost picking it up because I do help out with the Special Olympics, and now that I'm retired, I can help out with the spring, fall stuff. I usually just do the powerlifting, so I was going to help out with the shot put. So it's
Yeah.
interesting you bring that up because I loved it and I loved watching the guy throw it. So I think that would be so dope for you to
Well, it's
just get back
something
to it.
for a few years I went and did Highland Games, and
Yep.
it was so fun to me because it was like this whole kind of different explosiveness in powerlifting, and it was actually athletic, and I was moving again, and I thought, God damn, it feels good to move, and so I was thinking at this, it's like, man, because my back's healing up, it's feeling good. So I started doing some rotation. Like my rotation is as flexible as I am. I have not worked my rotation very much. So I'm kind of working on that now and seeing how it goes with my back. And then I'm like, man, I'm just going to go throw one day, see where I'm at and find a meet, see what happens.
That's so awesome. I'm piqued my curiosity. It's so funny because I never did the rotation on the shot. It was only the discus. It was the hop,
Mm-hmm.
the hop and
The
turn.
glide.
So yeah, the glide. So watching
I'll probably just glide, but I can do both.
it'll be I'd be curious. So I do want to get involved with the Special Olympics with it, and then I'll just when you're doing it, you're coaching and you're showing.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see how that all comes back to me. But
I mean, I think
I
that's an interesting thing. I don't know if you know is it Hunter Hernandez, the powerlifter girl? She's
uh
like crazy strong and a bodybuilder, powerlifter. Like, anyway, she did a post the other day about not like basically pigeonhole who you are into one thing. And I responded to it and did another post on it because I thought it was really cool. And it's like, I don't, like you said, there's so many powerlifters that, and I look back at like Odie Wilson and Anthony Clark, and I go, man, these guys died because they couldn't let go of that's who they are.
yeah.
They're that big, strong guy, and they can't handle not doing that. And like, I don't care who you are, we're not made to be 300 plus pounds as we get older.
Yeah, the weight, it's the weight that in it's interesting because people will talk about the drugs and they'll talk about it's the weight that kills everybody more than
Yeah.
anything else. It's the your body's just not made to. And some people are predisposed. Some people have genetic lottery. You
Yeah.
know, for everybody who says, "Oh, well, my uncle was 300 pounds. He lived in it." Yeah, but there's not many of them.
Right.
It's not the rule. The exception is not the rule. It's funny
What's
you mentioned it.
interesting though, you just said you were like 170 in high school.
Yeah.
So you actually put on like 160 pounds.
I put on myself.
And like my body weight was somewhere, I would say 240-ish naturally. And so I got up to just under 400 at one point. So like we both put on like that's a massive amount of weight to go above your natural weight. Like that was huge. That was huge. What size t-shirt were you wearing at your biggest?
All right. I was wearing either 4 or 5X. And I will be embarrassed enough to say, and it's funny, I laugh about it now. I once owned a pair of size 50 pants, but I had told everyone it was because my glutes and my hips and my thighs were so big. And my waist was so big. So yeah,
but that's kind of true though, because my legs were so big. In order to get pants that fit, I'd have to get a huge waist and cinch it down. But I mean, my waist was still huge.
Right. I was talking to a powerlifter recently. I'm not going to sell him out here, but I always look at different. When I talk about metrics, some of them are actually, for longevity purposes, and instead of going by body fat, because I don't like getting my body fat tested. I got tested once. I through calipers, I was single digits. I was like 9.7, which was a huge goal for me to hit single digits.
Mm-hmm.
And I never tested again after that. And people always ask me what's my body weight. And I don't care because it's not something I care to chase after. Yeah. Because if I'm a little heavier, then I'm going to get in my head about it. If my body fat goes up, because I'm trying to do all the right things. And I'm getting older, and there's certain things I might not be able to chase. So it's not something that's going to really it's going to do more harm than good. But one of the things it says is very important because I'm still morbid. I'm still severely obese according to BMI. But your measurement of your circumference of your waist from your belly button should be less than half your height. And so
I'm gonna have to try that.
Right. So I'm 5'8" on a good day. So we'll just say 5'7". And my waist is from my navel is 33 because everybody wants. So there was another power lifter who was asking about my weight loss, and I was like, they were asking me a whole bunch of things, and I said, well, I'm trying to be healthy, and I shared that, and they're like, oh, my waist is. I said, no, from your navel. No, my jeans are. I'm like, do me a favor, go measure yourself around your navel, because they said, oh yeah, it's only this, and I'm like, no, it's not. When people are telling you something
the guy that goes, I wear the same size jeans I did in high school, but his belly sticks out like 13 inches past that.
Yeah. And your pants keep going lower and lower to go under your belly. So listen, don't lie. I've been there. I know. So, that's one of the things kind of I've used to measure. So yeah, you can even suck it in if you want, but measure from your navel because there's no line at, because one of the things, even guys.
So your navel measurement is supposed to be half of your height.
Yes. If your navel measurement's under half your height.
So as I get shorter, as I get older, I got to get skinnier too.
Another good thing, which I'm sure you could do, is 40 push-ups.
Yeah, it's not a problem.
Right. 40 push-ups is a great sign because usually people are really, really heavy, can't bang out. You have to be strong, and you can't be too heavy to bang out 40 push-ups and have a decent amount of conditioning. I think that was done a study of firemen taking a test every year, and it was a longitudinal study. And the incidence of heart disease for the people who couldn't do 40 push-ups was it was glaring, the difference. And all it was the standard was 40 push-ups.
Those are interesting though, because I read one the other day because I started teasing some of my clients. Because I have people in their 70s that I train. And the study was grip strength had a great correlation to how healthy you are as you get older.
Huge.
And I thought, okay, come on, like how could this actually mean I'm healthier? And that's one of those things where I like to go deeper on everything. It's like, well, if you lift weights and train, your grip strength's probably better. So it's not necessarily that a grip means it just means that you're probably healthier than most people. because you probably exercise and do something to keep your grip strength up.
And here's the thing. If you have good grip strength, it's as a result of training heavier. Because
Yes.
if you're holding a light dumbbell and you're doing high reps, because the correlation with strength, first of all, we both know, because neither of us were trained to be a bodybuilder, you could put on an obscene amount of muscle from just training heavy.
Yes.
I did not, most of my training was just very based around compound exercises. I mean, I did, your assistance, but it was really about lifting heavy,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of volume and, actually a lot of weight, low reps, but lots of sets, a lot of volume. And, you're going to be gripping the bar for the squat, for the bench press. If you're holding heavy weights, you're going to be strong.
Yeah.
Uh, Another thing to share with you about grip, little thing I learned, listen to a podcast. If you squeeze your opposite hand, the hand you're gripping with will be stronger.
Yes.
So pass that along to
We've
everybody.
actually known that for years. Well, I knew that way back in physical therapy, where like if you have somebody who's they're cast up on their right arm, still make them work their left arm, and it will help keep that other arm maintain as much size as possible anyway.
Oh man, I wish I knew that thing for like the Thomas inch dumbbell, because I did a bunch of strongman stuff. Like the little things, the little tricks that you find that really help are pretty amazing.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's the thing that's the cool thing about talking to the older lifters and the guys that have experienced it, because like you can't learn all this stuff, the first couple of years you're powerlifting. So much of it takes years and years and years, and like all the little tidbits that we've picked up competing for 20 plus years, 30 plus years. You can't get that from some 22-year-old kid who just got a certificate from somewhere.
And I think that's why training with I like to train. I train with my wife, but we're both doing different things in the gym at the same time. I have everything's, I box squat now because I just find it much safer, and I just have no need with having the box squat at my house. I have no need to do regular squats, and I know for my back, I just always feel better. And with the trap bar, so I've really minimized a lot of the damage. So I bench in a rack, so I don't need spotters anymore, which is really
Yeah.
nice. But I think that's one of the things guys with raw lifting might not experience as much is training with a crew, and how valuable training with the crew is. It you pass along the knowledge, you push each other, iron sharpens iron. You train with
Yeah.
people I always loved. People always wonder, they're like, you had a really impressive raw bench press and really impressive geared bench press. And I'm going to give two people credit is, when I started benching the shirt, I started going and taking it seriously. I went and trained with Bill Crawford, which was, like a 3.5 hour drive. I went and trained with him every weekend. And on Wednesdays, I was driving to Massachusetts to raw bench with Glenn Shabbat.
Mm-hmm.
And Glenn was
both guys are super smart.
both super strong, and both, it's funny because people said if you stuck with one, you would have been better. Like,
I don't know about that.
I don't either. I don't care because I love how I did it. I wouldn't change it. I love the fact that I benched over 600 raw. I love the fact that I benched 900 in the shirt. For me, it was a really good numbers that I feel really solid about. So, the fact that I was able to do both was a lot of fun, because both are wild. Like I tell raw lifters, I was watching X Games one day with my wife, and that's when they first started backflipping snowmobiles.
Yeah.
And I was like, holy shit, that is crazy. And my wife goes, what do you think holding 900 pounds over your face is?
Mm-hmm.
I was like, oh, that's a pretty valid point. Like, so powerlifting, geared lifting is an extreme sport.
Oh, without a doubt. Without a doubt. Yeah.
It is dragster, muscle, those cars that go down the track and just blow into flames. That's geared powerlifting.
I've always loved, even though I didn't ride BMX my whole life, I've always loved the X Games. I've always loved BMX. And like with this podcast, I called it Courage Barbell Unlimited because it's unlimited. I'll I like going all over the place. So I had Rick Thorne on,
No
which
way.
was a way cool interview. I had a lot of fun with that. And then I found out that there was this local kid who was pro BMX. And I ended up looking him up, and I actually ran into him at the grocery store at one point, and I had him on. And it was interesting to sit and see. And I think because I think anybody that does anything to an extreme has an understanding of other things. Even if they don't know it, they know the extreme level of it. So like we talked about my lifting, and he's just like, dude, how the hell, like how do you like even have the guts to try and squat if you can even pick it up? And then I watch him and I'm like, dude, you're nuts. And we went over to, I have a park across from my house, and he's like, hey, dude, after this, I'm meeting my buddies. You want to go? I go, hell yes, I want to go. And I'm like, dude, I'm 50, man, and I'm still big. Like, I'm not doing none of that shit. And I'm just watching him ride around the park, and I'm like, you gotta be like, it looks so easy. Like, it looks so effortless to him. And I'm like, I know how many times you've wrecked. I know how many times you screwed yourself up. Like, this is nuts. This is amazing.
Yeah. I'd rather put 1,000 pounds over my face than stare at the bottom of a half pipe.
Yes.
Nope. I used to skateboard, and man, I ate shit more. I'm like, nope, but I appreciate, I love extreme sports. I love X Games. I love all that stuff. And yeah, so and I think raw lifters, I've done both raw and equipped on a fairly decent level. So I have a good frame of reference for both. Equipped lifting is by far much harder. I wish, again, things always seem a little different as we're older. I think judging is really what did in geared lifting.
Yes.
You know, it's not held to the same standards that it once was. I feel, and if it makes me sound old, that's fine. I think if it was held to more consistent, better standards, it might have a better showing.
Yes, I think it would.
Than it does now. I still appreciate it. I love it. Listen, I've had some lifts. I never had a super strong lockout. I have both my arms do not lock out 100%. I have, issues with my elbows. So my bench has never had great lockouts to them, because I was competition wide. I covered because I'm thumbless grip. I used to cover the rings with my thumb, so I was actually a legal grip, and I could hold the weight for a really long time. And if you're going to say, so sometimes I'd get good calls and sometimes I'd get bad calls.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to sit here and go, bash on the new guys. I respect it. I just think from a public standpoint, it got really weird with benching when guys were no longer able to touch.
Yeah.
And then, squats that didn't even hit parallel became the norm. As long as it's consistent, I think it's rad. I think you'd go do it. I don't go to meets, go, why are you doing this? Why are you doing it? As long as it's consistent, it's cool. And if people appreciate it, that's awesome. I do think if the judging was a little stricter, I do think maybe it would, again, there might be a little more money, maybe a little more representation. But I don't think that's what those guys were doing it for, just like that's not what we did it for.
Yeah, I think if you're gonna be successful in a type of lifting, you still have to think more on what's the normal person gonna think when they see this. And I know I try not to mention people's names unless it's somebody I know they don't mind if I tell the story.
Right.
But there was a meat promoter, big meats, a lot of popularity. I remember hearing him telling the judges, you got to ease up, otherwise everybody's going to bomb out. And as a lifter, if you hear that, you go, maybe I add another 25 to that bar and I don't sink it as deep, because you're trying to win. You want to put up the biggest number. And I think that's where it was like, no, suck it up, have one meet where you bomb everybody. I guarantee the next meet, they're going to start hitting depth. And I think that was part of it is, guys, you needed to have a strong parent because of the gear. Guys are like, I'm going to get tighter gear so I can do more weight, but I can't touch. But they're going to chance it because if there was a lot of big money meets, guys probably wouldn't have chanced it as much because they're trying to win money. But we were all going for like, dude, there was enough federations that you're like, I don't even care about winning a meet. I want to put up the biggest fucking number.
Yeah.
And so you were taking chances. And if the meet directors and the judges and everything said, no, listen, this is the standard, I'll bomb every one of you out. I'll hate it. And it'll make for a shit meet. But next time you come, you guys you'll hit your depth. You know?
Well, one of my closest friends, Rob, he was competing when I was, getting into big benching. He's 10 years younger than I am. So, I've since left serious competing, but he competes in gear, and he's really, he squats over, I think he got his first 1,000-pound squat. And he's killing it, and he holds himself to a good standard. And when I go to meets, because I don't go to a lot, I love lifting, but I don't go to a lot of meets anymore. Because quite frankly, they're really boring if you're not part of them.
Oh, yes, they are.
Yeah. We all know that. So, but when
Yeah.
I do go, it's the lifters that have really clean lifts that stand out to me, because numbers are almost inconsequential to me, because it's like what people love when I go do seminars, or I've helped out, when we do the coaching at Elite, and I say, I'll stand in front of a group of people and I'll be like, there's nothing any of you are going to do that's going to impress me. So show me good lifts, because we're here to make you better. If you're here to try to show me your PR, I've seen 1,000-pound raw squats. I've seen 900-pound raw deadlifts. I've seen 700-pound raw benches.
Yeah.
So unless you could do any one of those, don't try to impress me with how much you're going to lift. Show me how you lift, and we're gonna make you a better lifter. We're gonna make you more technically sound. So when I go to meets and I see really technically sound lifters, I love seeing someone go 9 for 9, because I know now, unless you're hitting some absurd numbers, and even in the geared world, nobody really cares. What does it matter? So when I'm watching, I see these really proficient lifters, and I really enjoy watching that at the meet. So that's fun to watch.
I'm very similar, because to me, I'm so into technique. I love technique. I love optimizing it. I love the way it is. So for me, seeing somebody do a lift with damn near perfect technique, that's like going to a museum and looking at a Renoir or a Monet or something. Like, to me, that's art. Like that I'm like, dude, that was beautiful, man. Like, I might tear up. That was fucking beautiful, man. Especially because most meets I go to, you see, I'm like, shit. Who the hell's coaching these people? Shit. And then you see one and you're like, oh my God, thank you for letting me see that.
We got a guy, a kid. He's not a kid, a guy. He actually became a lightweight strongman at like 19 or something. Because we had Derek Poundstone here, who is just a wild strongman.
Yeah.
Real close to winning the world's strongest man. I think he had come in second once. But a lot of us knew him. A lot of us trained with him. And there's a kid, Carlos Reyes, he's a man grown up with kids, but you should check out his lifting. Carlos Reyes. He's a raw lifter, but he's so technically proficient. And he's so methodical about training, nutrition, blood work. Like that's what I love. I love seeing someone really dig in, and he's more worried about doing it right than he is. He could have sacrificed a lot of, I'm sure he could have sacrificed gaining weight, different things that he could do to try to lift more, but he's remained mostly injury free. Like I think he just recently had like maybe his first little minor scrape with an injury. But again, I mean, he's probably in his 30s now. He started at, pro strongman, so he started lifting as a teenager. And to see that body of work and to see him still so technically proficient, he's a really, really fun guy to watch. And he's got all the lifts. When you see somebody he's got a great squat, bench, and deadlift.
Yeah. And that I love when I see that, because people are like, oh, well, he's built for this, he's built for that. I go, bullshit. Optimize your leverages and do them all.
Yeah.
And that was one thing about that I remember when I first got like Ed Cohn's VHS tape, because we're so fucking old. And I was like, I'm watching him warm up and I'm like, dude, I'm fast forwarding and I watch his 135 and his 900, and I'm like, they're exactly the same. Like, they're literally this. It doesn't look the speed's not different, the technique's not different, And then as I started getting to meet guys like Ed and Goggins, and it's like, all of those guys are very, like, if their technique, they stopped. If they couldn't hold their technique, they didn't go heavier.
Yeah.
And when I lifted, I was the opposite. It's funny because I found all these old videos I'm trying to slowly post. Dude, I miss shit all the time. I was like, dude, you barely got 765. All right, throw quarters on. Like, screw it. I had no fear of missing shit whatsoever. I'm like, if I get it in my hands and the negative comes down, like, buries me, well, then next week I'm going to control the negative. And then the week after that, I'm going to fucking push it back up. Like, I had no fear of negative shit at all.
Yeah, I think I watched it was a 795 squat. And I was like, oh, all right, Chad, it looks like he's done for the day. And then I think he went 855 or 8 something next. I'm like all right,
885, I think. Yeah.
He's going to get, you got it. It went up.
It was ugly, but it went up.
But as a coach, if you asked me, should I take another? I'd be like,
yeah, you're done. You're good.
No, I would have cut you off on that one. But I was not. I practiced technique. I wanted to be as technically proficient as possible, but I wanted to lift heavy. Like
I loved going crazy in the gym. Absolutely loved it. Still love it.
And what I've learned now is Wendler, Rhodes and Wendler. I've had so many people who have been invaluable to my training back in the day, as well as now. Wendler and Rhodes and I, we will correspond. We try to get together once a year at least. But we'll correspond. And what Jim's really instilled with coaching kids has resonated with me is I now have parameters for my training where I have percentages I train within. I can go plus or 5% based on how I feel that day. And if the form doesn't, it was hard for me to learn because I'm an explosive lifter. So everything would shoot to the top. And when it would slow, I would just end up grinding and grinding and grinding. And it would beat those were the reps that would beat me up. Then I found, if I'm just trying to be technically perfect, I was leaving a little too much in the tank. Like Jim said, it doesn't have to explode all the way to the top, but it needs to be technically proficient. And he has this saying, which I love, and I haven't updated my board in the basement because I write my little motivational stuff. But it's make every rep 100% awesome and let the chips fall where they may.
Mm-hmm.
So now, because I found whether it's causes too much inflammation, too much difficulty in recovery, that heavier weight and lower reps works really well for me. But every rep has to be 100% awesome. Mm-hmm. And I know, when you do something and you're like, that didn't feel exact to everyone else. It looked exactly how it should. To someone else, it looks easy. You finish the lift fine, but you either felt something in your shoulder or your glute or somewhere you're like, that wasn't exactly how it was supposed to be. And that's when I've learned to rack the bar. I never want to get to those reps, but if I get to one, I can still have 5 reps in the tank because I'll kill myself trying to get a lift. Kind of like you. I'm going to put it on the bar.
I have some hysterical stories about me and my training partners, like some of the dumbass shit we did.
I'll share with you right now. I went for one of the best stories that training with Rhodes at Southside, which was an awesome gym in Connecticut, powerlifting gym. I was going for a 605 two-board press. And the interesting thing is my two-board press was probably almost worse than my raw bench because it was almost a better stretch reflex when I went all the way down.
Yes.
So I missed this and I was furious. I'm like, taking it again. One of those ones where you're not even unwrapping your wrists.
Yeah.
Which is stupid. So I take it again and I miss it. All right. They're like, oh, you're good. Matt was trying to shut me down. I'm like, fuck that, I'm taking it again. So let me go through. I'm always the last in rotation because I was the strongest bencher. So I'm like, go do assistance, come back. I'll get like everybody from our crew. I got it on the 7th try.
You did get it though.
I wasn't leaving. Now tell me, so what? This is where you throw science out the window.
This is where we go to that mental. We're going to that mental plane.
Tell me in what world I should have gotten that on the 7th attempt.
I'm surprised you did.
I'm shocked I did too, and I think that was. I think it showed my tenacity.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I'm willing to go places. Well, again, I think the lifters, people who make it to the top of things, they don't get there by accident. Now, listen, I know we are not genetically gifted. Genetically gifted, if you took
honestly, if you were genetically gifted, you wouldn't have been a power lifter.
Right.
You would have went into a sport that made millions of fucking dollars.
That's the difference. And I tell people, I'd be the most mediocre bench presser in the world if NFL players wanted to get into, wanted to bench heavy. And so,
well, you look at guys like Gary Frank, who was in the NFL but not a standout in the NFL, and then he came to powerlifting and just dominated.
Yeah. What's the guy? I love watching his training. He's Pittsburgh. He was a Pittsburgh Steeler. Rodney James Harrison.
Sounds familiar.
I follow him on Instagram. He's a great follow because he's older now. He's out of football, but he loves to train and he's jacked. He's huge and he's scary as hell. He actually taught me one of the conditioning workouts I do with my wife. It's called Debo ball. You take a medicine ball and you throw it over a volleyball net at each other. And you try to miss it. Like you don't, unlike volleyball, you're not like bouncing it. But so you're heaving.
So I love doing these weird recovery things the day after training. And I had a group. I think we had like 5. We had like 2 guys that ended up being IFL football players. We had a couple power lifters. I took them to the park across the street and I brought a 20-pound medicine ball. And I go, you guys see the volleyball yard? You're playing volleyball. I go, of course you can't hit it, but you got to catch it and throw it back and not let it hit the ground. They had a fucking blast. Guys were diving and shit. It was crazy. It was so cool.
And you're moving on. So one of the biggest things I've done for my longevity is I do a lot of I do paddle boarding, I do hiking, I do skiing. So because mobility is such an issue, and we're so used to moving on very guarded planes with lifting. So for me, we
completely try to stabilize everything.
So for me to get out on the beach in the sand, throwing a medicine ball over a net, turning, twisting, grabbing is really so good for that connective tissue and just mobility. And I think that's another thing that I think having other interests has really helped me with longevity. Again, I'm not nearly as good. Someone had asked me, like, do you think you could, bench, 600 pounds again? I think if I took a year and I gained 100 pounds and I did nothing but train to bench 600 pounds, especially being retired, I think it's a possibility.
I do. The question is, do you want to do what that would take?
But at what cost? Exactly. So, I think it all depends on what you want to do with your life. And I think you have to balance things. And I think, that's the biggest issue for us and talking to the older crowd. There really needs to be like an old lifter podcast, because we're now out of science. I want to see what longitudinal studies have been done in strength athletes in their 50s. Because there's really not much blood we can draw from the stone anymore. So it's really hard to know what's best for us, because there's no studies on best practice for people where we are. I want to know.
Okay, but wasn't our whole career kind of like that?
So it's anecdotal. Right. I wish, like, the younger guys now, I wish we had some of the science they have. There are things we could have both done better. Listen, if you told me when I was 330 pounds, I couldn't walk around a half block. I was so out of condition. You can't tell me that I could have been able to be in a decent enough shape to walk a mile even at 330 pounds. I used to skip my second attempts because I was so out of shape that I wasn't prepared to take my second attempt. I would take my.
What did that do to your recovery? What did that do to your ability to generate force? So is that really science though? I mean, is that like they did a study on it, or is that just things lifters learned over time?
Right. No, that's what I'm saying. Like if I thought maybe I had a little better GPP or I had a little better conditioning, I might have been able to take that second attempt.
See, I think too, because like basically, okay, you did an all-time bench. There is no study. You're in the unknown now.
Right.
You're beyond what anyone's ever done. I'm trying to become one of the best powerlifters in the world when I'm normally don't sleep for 2 or 3 days. Like that happened all the time. Like who the fuck else has ever done that? Like I had no one to ask or talk to. I had to try to navigate it completely on my own. And so I came up with completely different shit.
Yeah, the outliers.
And guys like Billy Mimma has been busting my ass for fucking 20 years on this. The guy just won't leave me alone. But like it's all unknown, and it's hopefully that stuff like with Wendler. I had Wendler on before, and I want to get Wendler on again. I would love to have a regular Wendler, like Wendler once a month or something. Because I'm really fascinated, and right now I'm thinking, can I get Wendler, Rhodes, and Vinny? I don't know how to do that on Zoom, but I'm sure I can figure it out.
We did it once. We did it once on Elite. It was a lot of fun.
I think that would be hysterical. But I mean, I love listening to him, and because his concepts are so different from what I did, but his results speak for themselves. So then I go, okay, wait a minute. Can I take some of that stuff? Do we not have to kill ourselves all the time with super heavy stuff? And then I go, but then again, there's that mental side of I think every now and then you do need to.
Yeah. And it circles back to, I don't even know if we were recording when we first started talking about how you and I both have known and trained and competed with some of the strongest people in the world. And all of them do it differently.
Mm-hmm.
They're just willing to go. They train harder. Their training might be different. And if I'm not mistaken, what Billy broke your balls about was the fact that sometimes you might not train for a week until you were recovered. Well, I don't know if it was quite a week, but your training was based more on, when you were recovered, how you were sleeping versus a methodical schedule, correct?
Yes. I mean, I would basically train 2 heavy sessions a week. I think what people didn't understand, and this is probably part of my communication, or even the other day, I'm in the gym before my one group comes, and I'm squatting like 315 or something, box squatting, and my one client's like, I thought you said you weren't training until Thursday because of your sleep, and I go, I'm not training, I'm just fucking around. Like to me, this is not a training session to me. So a lot of people, I think what they didn't understand is it's like, listen, I'm doing something every day to get stronger.
See that?
But to me, only 2 of those sessions are actually training.
So I think that's where it is, because if you had asked me, you weren't in the gym.
Like a 20-minute sled dragging session, that's sled dragging, that's GPP, that's whatever. Like,
right, but you were doing something. And Billy, it's funny because I'll still hit it. We still message each other on Instagram. He just loves to train.
Absolutely, he loves to train.
I wish I could train like he does, and even with his heart condition, everything. Like I can't train. Like I'm on 3 days now of full body because I can't train 2 consecutive days because I can't recover, because I can't. If I can't train hard, I don't want to train. I don't want to train light. If
you could do it. I know you could do it. There would be shitty training sessions and you wouldn't make gains and you'd probably start putting on weight and you would hate the result, but you could do it. I think And I asked Billy, I'm like, actually on this podcast, I did a episode delving into discipline. Like, what is discipline? Like, people seem to think training your ass off is discipline. But to me, if you train your ass off and you slept 6 hours, you're not disciplined.
Right.
The disciplined person does what they don't want to do. And so Billy commented on that. And I did a whole other episode based on his comment.
Oh, did you really?
Like, I did part 2 strictly based on Billy's comment. And what I keep asking people is like, I've had I guess I'm kind of known for like, dude, less is going to get you more. And I've had top guys call me up they're like, dude, my coach told me to call you because I'm ready to quit powerlifting. And I go, what's going on? They're like, I feel like shit. I'm not getting stronger. I'm beat to crap. I'm like, what's your job? Like, how much sleep do you get? What are you eating? And I'm like, dude, you're training too much. And they start backing off of training. They train less days per week, serious days. And I go, you can still do GPP. You can be doing something every day, but it's got to be easy. And all of a sudden they start getting stronger again. And then they're texting me like, Chad, what's this voodoo fucking shit? Like, what do you got me doing? And I'm like, dude, I'm just letting you recover, man. You're not recovering, you know? And then there's guys like Billy who is like, are you really recovering? Or do you think you're recovering, or are you convincing yourself you're recovering, but you're not?
I bet you if we were out talking to Billy right now, I'd be curious to hear what he said. But I bet he'd say that if he trained a little less, he would have probably been stronger.
Then why wouldn't you do it?
Because he loves to train.
Which is fine. That's fine. I totally get that. But then admit, I train to train. I train to deal with the things in life. I train because I like training. I'm not training for results. I'm not training because, like, even when he was busting my balls in the Outlaw Forum, I never had a problem. Like, people go, what, he's a dick. And I go, no, he's not. It's his opinion. I go, actually, I love the fact that Billy tells you the truth.
You know where you stand with Billy.
Yeah, I like that. I hope someday I get to sit down and have a beer with him. I would love to sit down and talk to him in person. I would love to have him on this podcast. Like, because I respect the fact that that's what he feels. But at the same time,
I'll totally reach out to him.
Yeah, I would love to sit down and talk to him. Because, like, even the same time he was busting my balls, I'm like, Billy, have you done it? You know, have you tried it? And he's like, but you put up these huge numbers. You don't even fucking train. I'm like, well, maybe you could put up the huge numbers if you didn't train as much.
Yeah.
But then they won't do that. I get that a lot. I'm like, hey, I'll do anything to train. I want to get stronger. I go, okay. And for a while, I was asking guests on the podcast. I go, okay, here's my question for you. If you could train less and get stronger, would you do it? And I have huge powerlifters, huge guys go, no. I'm like, but why do you powerlift then? Like, if it's just about lifting, why do you compete? I wanted to put up the biggest goddamn numbers in history.
Yeah.
That's why I powerlifted. And the reason I started backing off, the reason I started giving myself more recovery was first because I began to trust myself, thanks to Dave. And because Dave basically called me out on it.
Yeah.
Do you want to train every day and deal with whatever you got to deal with, or do you want to be one of the best in the world? And I went, because he goes, you can't do both.
It's discipline. Well, I think what people don't understand, and I love how you use the word discipline, because it takes me more discipline to not train than it does.
Yes.
Because I want to train 4 days a week. I've always trained 4 days a week.
Uh-huh.
I train much better 3 days a week. And I guarantee 6 months from now, well, no, I'm not going to guarantee because I'm really, 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 I've gone back to the well a few times and I think I finally figured out. Now, maybe when I'm retired, it's going to be a little different because, teaching, my job is a stressful job. And, I'm actually going to I'm excited to do maybe a little more mobility, maybe a little more gap training with some areas that I have, some hips and shoulder issues. So I don't know, but I know I'm going to be able to train more. I don't know how I'm going to vary that but I know I'm going to try to adapt slowly. And because even if you start taking naps. Yeah. I love to train.
Yeah.
It's people like, they ask my wife, what's he going to do when he's retired? He's so young. Like, he's going to train. He's going to train a lot. Like, it's one of my favorite things to do. And so the discipline is not training.
Yes. I tell people the hardest thing I ever did to get a world record was not train as much. That was so hard. But I mean, in the end, it was great for me because I had to train to deal with life. Like I told Dave, I go, Dave, if I don't train every day, I'm going to kill somebody. Like, that's how I deal with everything. And he's like, dude, do you want it or not? And so it actually made me delve into myself, and it made me realize why I needed that. And I had to fix those problems because I didn't have training to cope with it anymore.
I wonder if Billy thought you were lazy.
I don't know.
So curious. I'm going to ask him. I'm going to totally correspond with him. See if we can get him on the podcast with you. It would definitely be interesting because I think he wants to do a bodybuilding show at 60. I think he's really trying to bulk up right now. He's out of his mind.
I'm not against that. I think that's kind of cool, but
I respect it. I totally respect it.
But what I don't understand is if you want to compete, then why not do what's going to give you the biggest results? And I have a lot of people, I go, okay. So people call me up and I do consultations. Like, dude, if your training's not going, just let's do a consultation. We'll talk about programming. We'll talk about nutrition. We'll talk about all the things, and I'll go through and try to find the problems, give you a cure. And so I'll have people on here and I'm like, okay, so, you're getting your sleep, your nutrition's pretty spot on. You're just not recovering. Like you might have a job that's very physical. And they're like, oh yeah, it kind of makes sense. And I go, so like every time, what have been your solutions to this problem? Well, I try training more. And then I get beat up. And then I go back to what I was doing. I go, okay, and then what do you try? Like they won't try backing off. And I'm like, have you tried it? Well, I just know it won't work. Well, how do you know it won't work if you haven't tried it? Like they're so set against it. And a lot of I had this too. It's a blue collar mentality. I outwork everybody and all the cliche sayings, but people don't want to do less. And I don't understand. I go, honestly, the first person I heard really talk about this was George Halbert. And he talked about it on his VHS tape again, about how when you get stronger, you're going to need more time to recover.
Yeah.
Because you now can push your body further. You have more muscle mass. You're taxing your body more each time. You're going to need more. And I go, this actually kind of makes sense to me. Because I'm I believe in right and wrong, my own theory of what right and wrong is. And I believe if you work hard, you should get something. So I'm like, so wait a minute. I trained my whole life. I got strong as hell. Don't I deserve to be able to get stronger and train less? Don't I deserve to add some of those things into my life that I didn't do? Like, doesn't that kind of make sense?
Oh, it totally makes sense. I think we become so consumed. Listen, you're not getting to the top of the mountain because you are a balanced person.
Mm-hmm.
So when you're so driven, you're not, I never, when I was competing at my highest level, all I wanted to do, like work was just got in the way. I had I just wanted to train, compete, sleep, eat, get better. So, I hadn't skied for years. I hadn't done so many activities because again, I don't think you can really have balance and be really, really good at something.
That's a good subject.
But I think if you can, man, you've really figured something out. But I think for the most part, because I would go to the whole concept of 10,000 hours. That if you're going to be, have you heard So
it's 10,000 hours to master something.
Yeah, and that 10,000 hours, whether it might not just be in the gym, it might be on the couch, it might be at the buffet, there's a lot of things that go into becoming, a strong strength athlete.
So let's start at the beginning. Define balance for me.
Where I think Dave talks about.
Me and Dave have had a lot of discussions on
Elite
this.
FTS. When he talks about the people who come to Elite FTS, I think they put training in the top three categories, top three at the most four. You're going to have family, you're going to have work, and you're going to have training. I think, maybe some people might religion, God, I'm not sure. I forget, but it's really within one of the top four things. So if you really love playing softball and you want to play softball and be a powerlifter, that's going to be some interference with your powerlifting. If you want to ski regularly, there's going to be interference because there's going to be a day where there's good powder. There's going to be a day where you're going to go. There could be when you want to get out there skiing. Now, maybe I could see, depending, maybe if you're an artist, you like to paint, that's probably good stress relief. That's because I think one thing we never really understood was we always thought about stress as, you know, kind of like the thing we did in training. It wasn't so much talked about what work did to you, what your personal life did to you, how that really affected your recovery like it does now, that it's another stressor. I think we realize that more now than ever. But I think some people's hobbies could have added an additional stressor, which you think you're getting that balance, but there's going to be some crossover interference into your lifting. That's what I think. I think it's when balance is like you have one of those things in the top. It's as important. So for me, I hold back on my training so I can hike, so I can ski, so I can paddle. If I didn't do those things, I'd probably train more and I'd probably be able to train harder.
You don't think you'd overtrain?
I would totally overtrain.
So then
I think that's why I can't. I think that's why I now have balance. But I didn't.
So you either have balance or you don't?
I think so, yeah. And well,
I disagree.
I feel like when you were at your top level of powerlifting, were you balanced?
I was unbalanced, and that's part of what caused me to get fucked up. If I would have had more balance, I would have been more successful.
Tell me one great lifter who isn't fucked up.
Define fucked up. But
you've talked a lot. You've talked to lots of lifters who were at their best. Would you say any of them were?
Well, I mean, I think most people in society are fucked up. So
would you find them normal, balanced people?
Well, what's normal and balanced? Again,
having other interests that are at the same level as powerlifting.
Well, I don't think you can be the best in the world at a bunch of different things.
Right. So I think that's why in order to be really good at something, you lose that balance. Hear me out. Sure.
There's equal balance and there's balance. I don't think anyone is equally balanced. I don't think anyone equally balances their family, their job, their hobbies. I don't think there's such a thing as equal balance. I look at it as a justice scale. I can be here and I'm still balanced. I can be here and I'm still balanced. Or I can tilt the motherfucking thing off the table, which is what I did. And that's crashing. And if you really want to extend it, it's an equalizer. It's an old school equalizer like we grew up with. All them buttons don't have to be exactly lined up for equal. Equal can be a little more bass, a little less treble, a little more this, a little more that. That's balanced. So to me, I was not balanced. I was pushing myself way harder than I should have. I didn't have enough other things in my life. My GPP got out of hand. Like, I was unbalanced, and that's what kept me from going even further. That's what pushed me over the edge with my mental issues. If I would have had more balance, I would have been better.
I think I'm talking more about the physical than mental.
But I think they're all intertwined.
I can understand that. And I think my perspective is a little,
and I think, like, for me right now, I might go, hey man, I'm really fucked up, man. I'm exhausted. I'm really tired. Like I'm overdoing it. Well, you know what? Today to help me to not train, I'm just going to go for a bike ride.
Right.
So to me, that's having some balance, and that in the end, that balance is going to help me be a better lifter.
I think our perspectives might be a little different in that, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you've struggled with mental health for a very long time.
Mm-hmm.
I've never struggled with mental health, except for the time when my was going through that difficulty with my parents, and I was struggling. And I contemplated suicide. I had told my wife, like, it was a fleeting thought. I mean, it was in and out of my head, but I told my wife, because we've been together for 30 some odd years, and so we communicate well. And I just wanted her to know my lizard brain had that go through it.
Yeah.
I'm never going to leave
That's
you
awesome
here.
that you communicated that with her, by the way.
Right. So yeah, thank you. And I'm so lucky to have her. And again, it was that fleeting, but again, it was a discussion and putting it out there. She's able to do a few more check-ins with me. Are you okay? You know, so I know how dark of a place that was, even for that nanosecond in time. And I don't know, I don't want to paint you into a corner, but you've had a lot of those dark places. I'm not saying maybe necessarily suicidal, but just getting into that mental health issue. I didn't need balance for my mental health. Does that make sense to you? I think we differ in
Oh yeah,
that.
no, I'm on a far end of the spectrum,
Right.
but in the end, it's the same. It's just a different level of intensity. Like with the reason I know so much about sleep, and why sleep is so important, and why the quality of sleep is even more important, is because I'm on the far end. I mean, do you have any idea the amount of lifters that I was able to help to stop them from going down a path? Because
Yeah.
I know the extreme end, so I can see when the problem first starts. I'm like, got it. Here's what we need to do, because this is only going to get worse if we don't stop.
Right.
So I'm able to do that because I'm on the extreme end. And I feel like with the whole balance thing, it's the same thing. You have guys that are training no, I don't want to say training too hard. They're not recovering enough. Like I struggle with
Understandable.
I struggle with the whole overtrain. Are you overtrained or under recovered? They're two different
Well,
things.
so for me, I think I would have like, if I was trying to get out hiking, trying to get out skiing, and trying to get the things that I find balance me now, I wouldn't have been able. I did nap a lot. I was always eating. Like, when you're eating 7,000 calories a day,
It's a
we
lot.
we
It's a
stopped
lot.
at McDonald's every day on the way home from work, just so I could get my because I wanted to move mass. And
Yeah.
like, so for me, I wouldn't have had time for any balance as far as outside interests. And luckily, mentally, I was in a place where that's all I cared about. So maybe I was balanced. Maybe I'm wrong.
Well, that's what
Maybe
I'm
I
saying. You
yeah,
probably were more balanced than you think. You maintained a high level job. You maintained a good relationship with your wife.
yeah,
You just chose that your main hobby, and it's still a hobby because we weren't making a living at it,
no.
was
That's
powerlifting.
that's a
Now,
very that it's a
could
very
you
valid
have
point.
and so you were balanced. Nothing was out of whack. You weren't, I don't know if you were ever severely overtrained. You seem like you kind of
No.
maybe borderline, but you were never really there. Now,
Yeah.
could you have maybe done a little less training and added more GPP or more mobility work? Would that have, I think there's a point, and I see this a lot, and especially in the bench. Like, I don't think people understand how technical the bench press is. I see guys that their upper body gets so tight that they can't fully retract and sink their shoulders and depress them to be in the strongest position. So I'm
Right.
like, okay, if you're training so hard and you're losing this mobility, then you're losing part of your advantage with the proper technique, which is going to give you more weight. So you're trading one thing for the other, whereas what's the best way to go? And that could be different. It's hard to say, because somebody can go, Chad, you had this world record. Yeah, but could I have done more?
We're always going to ask ourselves that. Yeah.
So like I'm always thinking of what's the most optimal, what's the farthest I can take something. And I think there's a point when we're talking about balance where, like with some people, they're spending so much time training and they're so focused on the lifting. If they would have done a little meditation, they might have been better. But I can't say for sure.
No, but doing the thing, I always did the things outside of the gym.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it was, I would get, I might not have been doing mobility work, but I was getting a massage regularly. I was getting, excuse me, I was getting ART. If they told me I could go somewhere and there'd be a voodoo witch doctor, who could sprinkle something on my head, I was going there. Like, I'm sleeping, I'm eating. I know ice isn't necessarily the greatest thing anymore, but I was icing.
I
So even
disagree. I still like ice.
I think it takes the pain away. I think, more of it is for hypertrophy. I think a lot of people, because it blunts the response to hypertrophy. But I needed it for more recovery than I need it for hypertrophy. So again, and also there's the whole anecdotal thing. I felt good. I felt like it was what I needed to do. I felt like I was making myself better. So by doing all those things, whether it was the CPAP and sleeping, it was a lot of investment. But I never really looked at it like the way you did, because I guess I could have had other hobbies and done other things. I don't think I would have been as good a power lifter. But I guess my life wasn't unbalanced because I was doing a hobby that I enjoyed. I was carrying on a relationship that very successfully in work. So yeah, it's interesting. You changed my perspective on balance. My balance, I instead of having multiple hobbies, I only really had one.
Yeah. So it was a trade-off. It was a form of balance. Yeah, you didn't have as many hobbies as you wanted, but everything else in your life was actually really good.
Yeah, and back then it's the only hobby I did want.
Yeah.
I could have done the other thing. I could have done the other things, but I
Now
knew.
if you go down the rabbit hole and you got guys that are fucking up their relationships and they're screwing up their jobs and they're living in their cars, that I would say is unbalanced. But why is it unbalanced? Because of the lifting? Like maybe they wouldn't have had a good relationship even if they weren't lifting. Maybe they were just assholes. You
Yeah.
know, I mean,
No,
maybe their job they just sucked at it. It wasn't because of powerlifting that they lost it.
yeah. Interesting. No, you really that's it
And I
definitely
look
carries.
at successful football players, dude. Most of them are married. Some of them have kids. Like, how is their life unbalanced?
Yeah.
It's not equal balance. It's not perfect balance. But you know what? I know a lot of blue collar people who don't have equally balanced. I don't know anyone that has an equally balanced life.
Yeah. You have to it's all what you're prioritizing. You know.
Yeah.
You can't prioritize all you can't prioritize everything. So,
I mean,
I
like for me, adding photography, getting into photography when I was at my highest level was a good thing for me.
yeah.
And
Well, because I think
like you said, going back, that's not one. And I did that on purpose because it's like, okay, physically, this isn't going to destroy me, except the fact that I love doing landscape stuff and I would still go hike and shit. But it was more of a mental thing, and it was more for my CNS, getting me into a very parasympathetic state, focusing on a picture and kind of a meditation even. So it was good for me, and I did that intentionally to be a good CNS thing.
yeah.
And now, did I miss training because I was taking photographs? No.
No. I
But there's
think
times where I
that's
went, you know what? I need to not train today because I'm pretty beat up. And I know if I go to the gym, I'm going to do something stupid. So I have this to go do to distract me from that.
I will be very interested to see if you could get Billy on. I'd love to hear this conversation because I think this is very eye-opening. It's a perspective that I never really looked at, which I think is very helpful. Because again, I think gratefully I never struggled with my mental health, but really once in my life, because again, once I got the CPAP, sleep was always in order. I'm very lucky to have a partner that I communicate with. So I'm lucky in that area. But for you, that area also really affected your training.
Mm-hmm.
So my mental health aspect, it was always good for my training because I was always in a good place.
Yes.
So I take that for granted. Whereas maybe I'm luckier
Here's
than a
here's
lot.
the here's the interesting thing people don't understand about that though. We're basically all the same. If I deprive you of sleep long enough, if I make you train hard when you're not getting sleep, you're gonna end up in the same place that I did. Unfortunately, I have the sleep issues, which puts me on the edge, so I'm more sensitive to it. But it's not like, oh, Chad has these issues. No, everybody has these issues. I just have them to an extreme side.
Interest That's because my worst issues were when I wasn't sleeping.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I never.
I mean, that's
Again,
why the number one torture in the world is sleep deprivation. You
yeah,
start going Lulu.
that's why the CPAP made such a huge difference in my lifting and just in my
Mm-hmm.
quality of life. You know,
I've
luckily,
I've titrated a few people on CPAPs, and it's like everybody's like life changing is a word that comes up. They're like it's a whole new world, man.
oh yeah, no, 100%. And I don't know why people fight it. And
Well, that's another one too. Is I have a lot of people that go, "No, I'm good on 5 hours," and I go, "But have you tried getting 8?" No, 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 I'm good on 5. I'm like, well, how do you know you're? And it's the same thing. Like a lot of power lifters, and I've had this a lot, especially with some of my older groups of lifters. When they would start, I'm like, hey, how are you feeling? Are you overtrained? Do you have any injuries? Da, da, da. And they're all like, no, I'm great. I feel great. I'm awesome. And then 6 months later, I actually caught a group one time talking about this, and they didn't know I was standing there. And they're like, hey, do you remember when Chad asked if we felt good? They're like, yeah. They're like, we were wrong. We're like, we're stronger now than we've ever been. We train less than we ever have, and we're all feeling great. And I go, yeah, what happens is you get used to feeling beat up. You
right,
get used. It's the same thing with the POW. It's the same thing with institutionalization. The human being has this huge ability to adapt.
yeah.
And it can be great, but it can also be horrible. So people get trapped in thinking they feel good when they really don't, because they've forgotten what it feels like to feel good.
Well, I used to be a 7 hour sleep person. That was always worked well for me. I don't know if it was what I needed to do as far as like when I wanted to go to bed, because I was always a late night person when I was younger. Now I'm an early morning person, which is interesting. So 7 hours worked, and I noticed, you know, as I've gotten older now, I really need 8. And so I've been doing 8, and sometimes I even slide into 9. And at 9, it feels better than 8.
Yeah.
So, it's how do you know you're hitting the law of diminishing returns until you've actually
Do you
gotten
go
there?
there? Yeah.
Right. And so one of my biggest things I'm looking forward to most in retirement is actually not having an alarm
Yes.
to
Just try listening. I dream about retirement so I can actually, I want to try just sleeping whenever I feel like sleeping.
yeah,
Because
I'm
of
going to be able to do
my
that.
narcolepsy, my body doesn't regulate it. So I'm like, what if I just went, like, who gives a, because I don't care about time necessarily.
Right.
What if I am actually get tired and I go to bed and I sleep until I feel like getting up and then I go do my shit? Like, I wonder
And
what
then
life would be like that.
you don't go back to sleep again until you're ready. One
Yeah.
of the greatest. All right, so I'm gonna wrap this up because unfortunately I do have to go. And by the way, I've enjoyed this talk so much, and we've gone in so many directions. If you had me on again or as many times, I'm available, and I'm really enjoying this because this has been helpful for me. But one of the greatest things Glenn Shabbat taught me about sleep was I would always try to go to sleep super early on meet nights, and I would be up staring at the ceiling, like because I wasn't tired.
Right.
I'm trying to get in bed at 7 o'clock, and my normal bedtime's 10 o'clock. And Glenn, he had said, stay up till you're tired. So when
Mm-hmm.
you put your head down, you go to sleep. Because 5 hours of good sleep is better than 3 hours staring at the ceiling, keeping yourself awake with your mind swirling.
Mm-hmm.
So it's one thing that I've I love that. It's very interesting because Dave says, people don't really appreciate things unless they pay for it. A lot of people ask me to do coaching. I have zero interest in doing coaching because I just don't. Good coaching involves a lot of time, and I think one of the biggest problems is people do a lot of very cookie cutter coaching, and I would never do that. And whenever I've done it, it's definitely not worth the value I'm not getting paid what I deserve. But I'd be very interested in doing consultations.
Yes.
Because I think there's a lot of value in talking to somebody and being able to give them the information they need that they can go use. But I can't babysit people and hold their hands and be their cheerleader because I have no patience for it.
That's why I've always loved, first of all, sleep amount is not the end all be all. Sleep quality also comes into that factor, along with how much energy did you use and how much energy do you need. If you're not doing shit all day, you probably don't need 8 hours of sleep.
And
Second of all,
and you're probably not doing a lot the day before a meet.
Yeah.
And second of all,
so don't force it. If you force it, I've always loved doing seminars because I like seminars because I'm like, hey, here's the information. Now it's up to you to do what you want. And I really like doing the consultations because one of the biggest problems humans have is we see everything from one perspective. So somebody can call me and we can talk and we'll talk about their training and their technique, and I can watch some videos, I can review technique. But basically now you have an expert. I hate calling myself an expert. Wendler made fun of my intro because it says legend. Wendler's like, oh, legend. That's fucking made me laugh. But now you have that outside perspective looking at things you might not have seen.
Yeah.
And 100%. that can be such a huge thing, or even to talk it out. It's the same thing I had one of my clients doing suspended good mornings the other day, and he did them last week. It sucked. And then this week he got it, and I kept telling him this, and he's like, dude, oh, that's what you meant. Why didn't you say it that way? And I'm like, well, why didn't you understand the first time? And I go, that's why I keep trying to say things differently to make you understand it. And I've had a lot of times, I got great stories with Duffin because if I don't understand, I'm going to say I don't understand. And I'm not being argumentative. I want to understand. And I've had a lot of discussions with Chris Duffin, and he finally says it one way, and I go, oh. That's what you're talking about.
Now I get it.
So it's fun in the consultation with people to do that. And that's why I still call people and ask for advice and stuff. Wow. Because Chris or Dave, they might see it different than I see it, and it might be clear as shit to them.
Yeah.
When it's not to me.
You just have to hear it in a different way.
Yeah.
Well, I really, really hope we can do this again. I've enjoyed this immensely. And again, nobody needs to hear this except us, but I'll probably be out that way pretty soon.
Yes. Definitely. I would love to do it again. I mean, I could keep talking easily right now for hours. Me too. Anytime you want to come on, like we could do another episode, like, I don't know, as soon as my schedule is clear, but awesome. Yeah, it was awesome. And definitely let me hit my outro and then I'll you coming out here. All right. So man, thanks for being on. Truly, it was an honor for me to have you on. Let's do it again.
Yeah, I loved it. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Courage Barbell Unlimited podcast. For more information, please visit CourageBarbell.com. Until next time.